Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. In this episode, I'm joined by guest co-host Mai Santamaria. Mai is the head of the Financial Advisory Unit for the Department of Finance in Ireland, and she's one of the most helpful people I know. She always has a uniquely incisive insight or two on what's going on at the crossover of finance and emerging tech when she and I catch up. Mai originally featured on episode 5 of Money Never Sleeps way back in 2018. She made a cameo on our 200th episode, and she's also a fantastic Techstars mentor. Two of the episodes that I did with Mai recently, episode 241 on the crossover of blockchain and AI, and episode 247 on the crossover of blockchain and digital identity, have been very popular with our most loyal listeners, so make sure you check those out as well. In this episode, Mai and I riff on what's happening with the digital identity projects of WorldCoin and TON, and how humans are incentivized to have their irises scanned or their palms read. And then we dive deeper into the human side of digital identity. Mai and I also explore how digital identity is a foundational element of life on the digital grid, and how that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending upon the economic freedoms that you may or may not enjoy, and also the geopolitical factors that can impact the sovereignty of the digital infrastructure you use every day. Wow, that's deep. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. I was going to do some type of Eminem themed intro here about look who's back, Mai's back again, tell a friend, but I've decided not to do that. So Mai, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me again.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Wonderful. How have you been?
Been good. Busy. You know, April and May always busy in Ireland. With Techstars, Blockchain Ireland, quite a few things happening. So yeah, busy, happily.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm going to miss Blockchain Ireland this year because I'm going to be en route to New York for the Techstars Demo Day.
Yes, too much.
So I won't be around for that, unfortunately. So there is a lot going on since our chat back in December, which got me thinking deeply more and more about the intersection between blockchain and AI. And that kind of spurred another conversation into episode 247 on digital identity, which Niall Dennehy, shout out to Niall, our true super fan of Money Never Sleeps, that he said that is probably one of the best episodes that he's ever heard of Money Never Sleeps. So that was a nice validation that we had a good chat. So thank you, Niall.
Thank you.
And that also beyond that, I've invested through Techstars, through the Techstars Web3 program, which is currently going on, in Proofspace, which is a no-code platform for enterprise enabling user-centric identity, which is a nice new name for decentralized, user-owned, reusable, verifiable credentials. Okay, so decentralized ID, just call it user-centric. Call it that the user, it's centered on the user owns it, it's theirs, it's their data, it's their information. We should enable them to hold it and use it.
I love that, yeah.
So I'm thinking about this space even more these days, and a couple of things came up in the last, say, few weeks, really, that I thought were pretty notable, because WorldCoin announced, it was in Cointelegraph back on the 9th of April, that they tightened their privacy checks and are allowing users to unverify their World ID. And I was thinking about this specifically in April because I was headed over to London for the Techstars Web3 week in person that we do in the middle of the program. And I knew that there was, because I couldn't find it now, an orb for WorldCoin in London because I was going to get my eyeball scanned, right? Mm-hmm. Who doesn't trust Sam Altman, right?
Sure.
But I kept getting back on the app, no orbs available in London. So I don't know, it was all booked up or whatever, but I wasn't able to do it. Yeah. But this kind of got me thinking even more about the connectivity between digital identity at the government level, like you and I talked about, or at the sovereign level. And we went kind of around the world and looked at a few different examples of that, to kind of a far-reaching conversation about decentralized ID that I did with Laura Walsh a little bit after that you and I had the conversation. Shout out to Laura. And then all the multiple things that are going on to try to enable individuals to own their own identity data and to be able to do that at scale. And I saw this WorldCoin thing, thought about getting my eyeball scanned, could not, did not, but I'm still interested in it. I have the app. I'm lined up to get some type of an airdrop. And some of the reason why people use these things is just for the potential airdrops that are coming up. But there's been some things that have happened with WorldCoin over the past couple of months with different things happening in different European countries, hasn't there?
Well, in Spain, because I actually was there when I saw the articles, I think they kind of paused iris scanning. France maybe as well. I do know that Kenya banned it completely. I wasn't too sure why, whether it's just a case of maybe a sovereignty thing where the government felt they would rather have control of that biometric data. Yeah, I would say Spain and France paused scanning. I wonder whether that's the case in the UK as well. I'm not too sure on what grounds, but I do think it was interesting in the article there, Pete, on 9th of April, talking about the upgrade to security. I was hoping to read more about where the data might be stored or the servers or the access to that or the triple locked cryptography, something like that. I was quite surprised to see, to read that the upgrade was just the ability to just delete your ID. So is the security because, I don't know, something happens to you, pass away, and someone could just go off and use your ID instead if that system was hacked? So it was an interesting angle to it. Don't know what you think about this. Like you have an idea of a passport, obviously, that dies or disappears or is, never to be used again. But for example, in Spain, I know we mentioned the IDs, the national IDs that we have there. You have your number, and say it will be someone of my generation that has a number that starts with a very low number. I know that's a recycled national ID from someone who may have passed away many years ago, right? That's kind of made me think about lots of stuff. I thought the upgrade was more about security really of my data. I still don't know where my iris would be saved, who would have it. And I've been thinking a lot about physically, where would that be held?
I'm with you. And for those that aren't aware, that the whole process is that WorldCoin, you go into a WorldCoin center and where your iris can be scanned by this big orb. And that is then written into a token stored on a blockchain. Your data is securely stored on a blockchain that is decentralized, and WorldCoin is an open protocol. So others could fork it and build on it, but your data is still your data. You own it. You access it through the WorldCoin app, which is basically a non-custodial wallet. WorldCoin is basically saying that they are enabling now you to unverify your world IDs, okay, by permanently deleting your iris code record, and it will be gone. So where this is going, though, is kind of the big question is that, okay, you've got WorldCoin, you've got the open network, which is related to Telegram, which I wanted to talk about in a second, that you have all of these different offshoots of, hey, you can own your own data, but what can you actually do with it? That's wonderful that I've got my iris scanned and I know that it's me and I can hold it in the secure app that is written into a blockchain and is stored in a decentralized manner. But what can I do with that? Can I verify myself somewhere? As of right now, the only incentive for me to use it is that there may be some airdrops coming up.
Yeah.
The whole idea with WorldCoin is that there's the concept of universal basic income, and that identify yourself now, and when the economics around this whole network reach a certain stage, distributing universal basic income out to the world of people who have identified themselves as being an individual that you can verify that, hey, you now get this portion of universal basic income because AI is going to take over and none of us will have to work at all. And we can all sit around drinking Long Island iced teas.
Is that utopian or dystopian?
I think it's kind of dystopian. Yeah, I wouldn't last too long.
Yeah.
Those Long Island iced teas can be really sweet and sickly sweet sometimes,
it's, in a galaxy far away. Yeah, like I think the use case is the key. And it maybe feels a few years into the future too far ahead for a lot of people. It's your iris scans. We can talk about that as well. As you know, the news on the tongue, that's actually your palm. It's not even your fingertips, it's actually your whole palm. Which made me think of, what's that movie that made the remake? They actually have the phone in the palm. Colin Farrell, Total Recall.
Oh, Total Recall.
Yeah. The second one, the first one was Arnold Schwarzenegger. The second was Colin Farrell. And actually he actually has a mobile phone implanted into his palm.
I never saw the remake. I never saw it. Was it good?
Yeah, so, yeah, well, as remakes go, yeah, it's kind of part. It wasn't too bad.
Poor Colin. I got a funny story about Colin Farrell.
Oh, God. But I was reading that Ton article, and that's what came up to my mind. Because I keep reading about, we're going around with mobile phones, and when someone can just implant a chip on our wrist, we won't even need that, right? But it's kind of funny as he holds up his hand and it's talking to it like this in a movie. Sorry, I can't see it on the podcast, but it's quite funny. But, even I was reading the article about Ton and the palm versus the iris. Like, your iris obviously not supposed to change through life. So even from a utopian or dystopian future where I might, receive a universal income of sorts, and you'd hope that your iris will stay the same. Your eyes might be a bit bloodshot, but that's not what's scanned. But your hands do change. Fingerprints do change. So you could have an accident, you could have a scar, you could lose a hand, God forbid. So longer term into the future, as a use case, I think maybe the iris is a better choice if I had to choose right now. But at the moment, and the interesting thing is, usage of both of them is driven by a financial incentive.
Yeah, that's what it all comes down to, is incentivization.
Yeah.
Like last week, I spoke with a few of the founders from the Techstars Web3 program, and we talked about incentivization. We talked about orchestration of behaviors, and that in any instance, regardless of whether you have a blockchain at the core of your tech stack or not, that you still need to incentivize users, and you need to find a way to bring them on board. And there's a playbook for this, which is agnostic to Web 2 or Web 3 on, hey, what are the 8 to 10 different methods that I can use to bring users on board? People are using things like quests these days, but incentivization through token economies is one of the more popular ways, obviously, to do this in Web 3, which is a very small part of the global tech ecosystem right now, but a very important one in terms of where people think things are headed. So when I look at what the TON network are doing, or the Open Network, TON, they've got this $5 million incentive program to drive digital ID verification. So yes, like you said, scan your palm, your ID can be with TON Society rather than with WorldCoin. Or you can have them with both. Place your bets and spread them around. Just make sure you know where your data is and who holds it, because it's your data and you should hold it. So just to look at this article specifically, which was in Cointelegraph as well back on the 8th of April, that the TON Society, which is a community of developers and contributors building out the TON ecosystem, will distribute 1 million TON coin to users participating in the voluntary Proof of Personhood program. Proof of Personhood, I like that. The project aims to enable digital identity verification for Telegram users over the next 5 years. I use Telegram a lot. It's a lot more popular in Web 3 than it is in Web 2. I see all different kinds of Web 2 names, or all different kinds of names of people from my past in the professional world that are popping up. So-and-so now has a Telegram account, or so-and-so is now active on Telegram. But would I verify myself on Telegram if I think I'm going to get some type of an airdrop here? Why not?
Something for free.
And I would do it. So they're using this human code technology to allow users to verify their human identity on the blockchain. It's available on Google Play, on Apple Store. That the incentives will be given to TON Society members who complete a palm scan and prove their personhood. A soul-bound token is then minted to represent their verified digital identity before users are rewarded for participating. So you just need to get into this. It's effectively a token economy in order to be rewarded for it. And there's going to be, I'd say 80% of the people who go do this will do it for the basis of, I'm getting tokens here, I'm getting an airdrop.
Which is interesting because they're similar when you look at both WorldCoin and the TON, but they're different. And listen, I was trying to read through them. I was just trying to say, what does it mean to me? How do I read this? How immediate or future-proof is this, right? So what struck me, for example, TON, is they talk about personhood, about WorldCoin. It talks about human identity. Maybe you kind of had the coffee that day. It was just like, well, what's the difference between a personhood and a human? I'm talking about different things straight away. Like WorldCoin's now asking for age identity up to 18 years old, right? But you need the app. And yet, most 10-year-olds, 98%, 95% of 10-year-olds have a mobile phone. But I'm just kind of, yes, it's great to incentivize through financial, but maybe the incentivization was a specific use case the uptake would be much higher and usable at the start. So Ton is about Telegram. Like, you're not going to have many 18-year-olds using Telegram. That's the reality of it.
No.
But say if I was a mother in a country where my children could be at risk of trafficking, for example, or selling, into marriage, or slavery. I mean, I don't know. I actually...
Still a thing.
Yeah, totally. All of them still a thing. I happily would have my children's iris scanned and stored. I happily would do it, because to me, it would be about protection of that white hole deer, or probably dearest.
That's your incentivization.
Yeah, straight away. And it was kind of bizarre, because am I missing the point here in terms of the target market or the use case, or I don't know. It's just like, it's so ambitious.
No, you got a point there.
Yeah, it's so...
You got a point there. Well, it's like you need to scale things back, or scale things up, really, and start thinking about not what Western societies and people who are living a certain economic freedom have at their disposal. This is about the other 7 billion people around the world who perhaps do not have those same freedoms. If you take the US, you take Europe as a whole, and then some of the other more developed countries in LATAM, in Africa, and in Asia, maybe you get down to 6 billion of the 8 billion people that, don't have the same economic freedoms that we enjoy. And that's what it's WorldCoin. It's not EU-US coin.
No.
And that you're looking at securing the rest of the world, where a universal basic income could make the difference between, a kid growing up with some infectious disease from the water or something that was passed down genetically or whatever, and a kid then getting a cure.
Correct.
And being able to live a happy life.
Correct.
Right. And, so whether it's universal basic income, whether it is iris scans that eventually are connected to DNA scans that can then identify genetic disease, some of the stuff that Daniel Uribe from Genobank is working on, and that we will be able to improve society through this stuff. And is Sam Altman the right guy to be doing this? Perhaps. Can you look inside somebody's head? That's what we always try to do. But, he's had his ups and downs. But again, for me, would I get my iris scanned? Of course I would. And because it's not that I inherently trust Sam Altman, it's that I think that I understand how the technology works, and I feel secure with that. I feel safe with that.
But the thing is, though, as ambitious as the project is, and I mean, you and I are looking at it through the benefit of understanding the technology, and you even understand it a lot more than I do. But for most people who the technology is scary as it sounds already, whether they trust him intrinsically or not, is just one step too far to trust. And is that why then they need the financial incentive? Whereas if the use case was the right, you wouldn't think about it twice. If as a parent, I've got this secured, my child will never be trafficked, they'll have access to basic, whatever it is, you would do it. And
you would.
Yeah, and you would go past this, I'm not too sure about technology, because that's not your priority at the moment. There's all of those other things that you're more likely to take first. So I was just reading it. It's amazing how just a few words just kind of, just kicked off that thinking in my head. Even that idea of personhood and human being, is this a legal distinction? Are we saying that human beings are less, that are not 18 years old, do not deserve the same access to X, Y, and Z? I mean, why 18? Why not 16? Why 21? It's bizarre. You can have a mobile phone at the age of whatever, because we don't have a limit. In Spain, you can agree pretty much without permission from any parents to, as a teenager, to agree to have a sex change at the age of 16. So there you go.
Wow.
So why this 18-year-old? Why is there a personhood? Because what? Because we're saying that access has to be tied to financial. But there's more to financial rewards to life. There's lots of things that people could be access to that we have rights to as a human being.
I would say that leaving it at that 18-year-old age limit is probably removing some barriers here for WorldCoin and for TON in terms of the regulatory side of things.
Probably.
And if they say, listen, this is only for 18 and up, that removes some noise and headaches for them in terms of what they may need to do.
Well, legally, because you might need to ask
But you're right,
permission.
like my daughter has an iPhone. She's 13. Her older phone was the fingerprint scan. The newer phone is the Face ID.
Pick up.
How quickly has Apple moved from fingerprint to Face ID? Iris is going to be next.
Yeah.
And Toncoin, Ton Society are already doing it via palm reader. So we're there.
Yep.
Whether it's WorldCoin, Apple, Google, Android, Telegram, whomever, that this is how fast it's moving and that it is all literally in the palm of our hands.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And sorry, I'm back to your point that's already in the palm of your hands. What do you think about the news? I think it was late last week. So I can't remember the exact date. Maybe it was over the weekend. Vodafone was saying that the best hardware wallet that could potentially be used is SIM in your mobile phone.
That was interesting.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, I'm not sure, how many people have actually lost their phones? Talk about being uncomfortable or, uncomfortable about your data and everything else being held in one place. I mean, if you really have anxiety, separation anxiety from your phone, would that actually increase it if everything was in that SIM? Yeah, I'm not sure I would be so comfortable with that at the moment. Yeah, I can see how from a hardware perspective, It's got the cryptography, everything's in C2 anyway, it's just already there. But it's like, wow, I don't think my anxiety levels would actually be able to deal with that.
Yeah, Revolut are doing something interesting around this space is that they are now offering eSIMs to people. And so it's the virtual SIM. But Vodafone is talking about integrating wallets directly into SIM cards. The case of SIM swaps and someone walking into a Vodafone with an ID that kind of looks like you and able to get a new SIM because they said they lost their phone and that they get your SIM with your phone number on it and then start using that to verify themselves online and get access to everything under the sun that's yours.
Yes.
So I don't think SIM technology yet is at the point where I'd be happy to store crypto on this little miniature hardware wallet that is a SIM. I want, for my Ledger Nano, I don't think anybody's going to break into my house to go find it, but it's in a specific place in my house in a waterproof bag,
I love it.
In a safe.
I'm
not, I'm worried about dropping this thing in the toilet, right? So I'm not putting any crypto on that.
Exactly. I was just actually thinking about, I loved the wire that kind of broke all of my, really right.
The burner phone.
I mean, the SIMs. Yeah, it was the whole thing, and the burner phones was just fantastic series. Could you imagine hardware wallets and your SIMs? Put that onto the wire, go back to it, and see if that would work. No,
you couldn't. So I don't see that working. But I think people are thinking about what is the device that a great proportion of the world's population have with them.
Well, this made me think of two things here, Pete. I know we're using the phone. We're going to be thinking of utopia, dystopia too far into the future, the way WorldCoin is, as we started the chat here. Surely we're going to be moving on to the phone directly into your wrist or your palm. A la total recall and your Neuralink.
On my ring right here,
Yeah. So that you don't have to worry about where it's stored. No, particularly if it's subcutaneous. We have chips for dogs. That's probably the way identity is going to go eventually. A lot more difficult unless people start getting at the knives out and cutting skins. Hopefully, we won't go to that for stealing. But then the important thing is the link there. It's the link piece. And I know we barely mentioned it there, but we've been looking about this for a while now. It's just we focus a lot on the technology, on the output, on the usage, on the incentivization, on the use cases, on the acceptance rates. And there's always the part of what's infrastructure that's going to make this happen. And we've been looking at the wider maybe space tech in Ireland for over a year, but I think only recently I've become very aware of the importance of what we don't have and what we need to protect. Mm-hmm. So I know that the EU, and I think the Commission actually today meeting up and corporate what they're doing later this month, they're looking at what is the digital policy plan in Europe for the next 10 years. And I don't think I've actually ever seen the focus on digital infrastructure so well articulated, is so clearly articulated before. So, and that got me thinking, and this was And I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of geopolitical developments. We've had obviously the war in Ukraine, what that did to our supply of gas and so forth. But really thinking about where's our digital infrastructure sovereignty lie? What do we control and what we don't control? So when I started looking at it, it was a bit James Bondy. I'm like, come on, this is too high level. Mm-hmm. But it's actually really interesting. There's the satellites, but there's the cables. And even on the satellite space, coming to learn there's different types of space and what we actually have ownership on or control from a regulatory perspective and what's completely open for all. It's a little bit like the case of the financial sovereignty with credit card payments of providers. We don't have a European credit card service provider. It's Visa or it's MasterCard, and they're both US-based.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to have this amazing digital economy, over the next, hopefully, and continue to the next 3, 5, 10 years. But who's going to own the digital infrastructure? That's going to run on. And can someone...
I don't think anybody should own it.
Could someone just unplug? And that's what's been very interesting. So I had the link there.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, tons. And that you're looking not only at the financial side of things, but you're looking at just data in general.
Yeah.
And could Google decide, I'm done with Europe.
Yep.
I'm out. Could Amazon, AWS say, no, this is not going to do it.
Yep.
And pull the plug. And then all of our Google data is just gone. And Visa, MasterCard pulling the plug. And that's why I think, Jesus, does it all come back to blockchain? But that where you're able to just move money digitally as if you were taking a 50-euro note out of your wallet, a physical note out of your wallet, and tossing it through the air to your neighbor.
Yes.
Okay. And being able to do so securely and knowing that it was going to land there. And that just lands in your neighbor's leather, physical wallet, pocketbook, purse, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that being able to do that digitally and completely remove the dependency on sovereigns, on companies, corporates that are controlled by sovereigns or that are able to be investigated and able to be challenged and able to be shut down by sovereigns. That, to me, well, I don't know if it's a utopia, but it feels right. And it feels kind of weird saying this. That is my belief now. And that that coming after years and years of being involved in the corporate world, what do I think is the risk? The risk is pretty small in today's world, that my financial rails will be shut off, that my data will be shut off from where I live right now and the economic freedoms that I enjoy. But there are another 6 billion people around the world where this is a reality. There are people in Europe where this is a reality. People in the US, very much so. All those...
So true.
Time and time again, telling the story of the West Coast VC that was being pitched by someone talking about banking the unbanked. And that West Coast VC in the US says, what do you mean unbanked? Anybody can get a bank account. And that was just their view and their perspective of the USA. But there's tons of people in the US who can't get a bank account.
Yeah.
So I think there's that infrastructure needs to be open. It needs to be public. It needs to be available for people to use, available for people to build on, and to build their own solutions here. So, I know that you shared that story with me on the Galileo satellites and what was going on there. That is opening up the digital infrastructure for Europe a bit, isn't it?
It's securing it. I suppose it's securing it. We do have sovereignty over several constellations of satellites over Europe. So effectively, some of them actually are connected with both US and actually Russian systems, would you believe? But in terms of GPS data, navigational, even data used for, agriculture, marine, and so forth, actually is owned and managed within European soil, which I think is great. We do like some launching capacities. Sometimes we seem to, every time we want a satellite launch in a certain space, sometimes we need to go outside of the EU because there's lots of other details I don't want to go into. I've come to learn about why we can't launch stuff in Europe, but then we have to actually ship that somewhere else to be launched. But then eventually, all of these kind of, it's been with research and reading and interest, like it's fascinating. If you're, Star Trekky or whatever, and you start reading stuff, this actually makes it a bit real, which is quite interesting as well.
It does.
But the closest interesting to me experience, I had to visit South Korea last month for work. I was attending an OECD roundtable actually with the Financial Services Authority there and some of the Asian countries. And Google doesn't work in South Korea. So Google Maps does not work in South Korea. So effectively it's banned. So the authorities said, we don't want Google Maps because they didn't want their detailed geographical data be known to their neighbors in the north. So when you visit South Korea, you have to download Kakao. What's the other? I don't remember the other app. But anyway, so that is a state-owned equivalent of Google Maps.
Totally.
Which totally makes sense. But then, which was great because otherwise, if you're lost, you're going through South Korea, everything's in Kangul. I probably know more Japanese than I do South Korean. So you pretty much, there's things are translated into English in terms of signs and stuff, but you can get pretty lost very quickly. So download Kakao, that's fine. You kind of thought, but the interesting thing is, if you zoom out of, say, Seoul, right, there are some areas that you kind of go. I wouldn't say they're just kind of blurred out, but you don't know. And these are like some of our South Korean colleagues were just saying, well, like this might be there or might be not. So it was just a case of, because we own Kakao Maps, our neighbor or our enemies would not be able to be 100% sure whether this building actually exists there or not.
Yeah.
Which was like, there's security straight away. So I just thought,
you can put up the dummy aircraft hangar.
Yes, literally, let's go back to the James Bond theme, I was just thinking about paper planes down under like big nets in the middle of nowhere. So it was a fascinating experience. And there were people that flew in from all over the world for the roundtable. And it was just people saying, sorry, I'm late. I didn't realize Google Maps didn't work here. I mean, everybody's saying the same thing. I'm like, man, what have we turned into, So
totally dependent on it. It's ridiculous. I know there was a company that nearly became a Techstars company that from earlier this year, that the problem with Google Maps in India wasn't that it wasn't available, it's that it was too expensive. And that if you are a Deliveroo type business, that you're paying something like 3/4 of your profit for delivering food. Yeah. You're paying that to Google for using Google Maps as part of your app. Okay.
Wow.
So, so you can so that people can be located, and to have that API through to say, all right, this is where the individual is that you need to deliver to. Those types of things. Right?
Yeah.
So this company, what they were doing is that they were putting the mapping app into the palm of people's hands, as we've been talking about, not physically into the palm of their hands, but through their smartphone.
Yeah.
And enabling them to go around and map the urban areas of India around the most heavily delivered to geographies in India.
Very good.
And they would incentivize them initially through Amazon vouchers, which is a points-driven system, which a lot of early stage crypto type ventures are using right now, is do a point system first. Once we get to a token stage, if we need to, they will change that to a token, a fungible token that you can then off ramp into fiat. But that was their innovation in saying, let's just let this happen at the consumer level. And instead of using Google Maps, they can use their app. I've seen others that are a Techstars company, Nadix, they just raised something like nearly a $5 million round.
Wow.
That what they're doing is that they're putting cameras onto people's dashboards and enabling you as you drive around to map the world.
Brilliant.
And it's completely open source.
Very good.
And so when I talked to them a few years ago, I got quite excited. This was back in my metaverse phase where I'm like, okay, wait a second. So you can map the world, but you can also map a virtual world and like do a metaverse type thing. And the guy's like, yeah, Pete, whatever you want it to be is fine. I'm like, thanks. They're a great team. Nadix.
Brilliant.
They're an impressive team. NATIX, if folks want to check them out.
There you go.
But yeah.
But even that, all that data needs to go somewhere. It needs a GPS system. It needs to be uploaded. It needs to be kept something. And let's go back to this.
Yeah. So if you're driving around Europe using Nadix, and I think these guys are from Italy, that you need to be connected to these Galileo satellites, don't you?
You need all the digital infrastructure.
Or you will be through some way, shape, and form.
Absolutely.
And they've put up 2 more. and, like you said, secured this even more? And will this become a kind of, or is it already something that Europe has that is public infrastructure because the government's operating it, compared to private infrastructure that may be the case in the US and in other countries around the world?
Correct.
To kind of round things out a bit, we're not past the government handing things out like hotcakes in the US with Wells notices going around. So we saw both Consensus as well as Robinhood got Wells notices or about to get Wells notices in the last month. It seems like the Gary Gensler administration at the SEC is just like thinking they may be on the way out, maybe they, and they're trying to just drag everybody down with them on the way out, which is just ridiculous.
I'm not a lawyer, don't understand. I was actually just reading there the case of Robinhood. I mean, they've been put their hand up. They were told to register. They put application 18 months down. They've told no, and now they've served the notice. I mean, maybe the pause bottle in their printing machine is off or something. It's just like printing out notices like hotcakes. I don't know. I don't know. They even delisted all those coins. So they were told, all the tokens they were told to delist. I mean, they were as law-abiding citizens from what I can read as they could be, and they still got the papers in.
I know. I think we'll get through this, though. I think cooler heads will prevail, hopefully, and that these things will either be thrown out of court or that there will, that logic will find its way through and these things will win out. I expect they will. I'm on the right side of history, I expect, with this. Yeah, as are you. So
my frustration with this, Pete, is, and so this is probably my accounting head on in terms of my opportunity cost here, is imagine what you could do with all that time and resources if they were focused just somewhere else, that if they're more needed.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it there.
That's what Hester Peirce said.
Yeah.
One of the SEC commissioners, she's like, imagine what we could have done with this budget.
Yep.
If we would actually pursue a better framework here.
Correct.
So
this opportunity cost.
They've got a ways to go. But listen, I'm going to leave this conversation optimistic, as I always do when I talk to you, Mai, in terms of looking at the future of digital identity and the connectivity of that to digital infrastructure and why all of this is important from a human perspective, never mind where the technology might take us to a Star Trek type future. Like you said, that this is about real life, and this is about the 3/4 of the population on this planet that probably do not enjoy the same economic freedoms that we do. So,
indeed.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I know I'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Pete.
That does it for this week, folks. And you can learn more about the stories we covered in the show notes on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie. Thanks to Mai Santamaria for all the insights she shared in co-hosting this episode with me. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as it helps others to find the show. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3, and I lead the TechStars Web3 Accelerator. There are plenty of links in the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie and how to get in touch, so don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!